the Wall Street Business Network.
Are you one of the 9 million Floridians living in a community managed by a property manager or HOA? If you've ever wondered what your rights are as a resident or what your role is as a volunteer board member, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Condo Coaches, your resource for when your gated community starts to feel more like you're stuck behind bars, or when that guy next door decides that a hot pink Chevy on cinder blocks really sets the tone for the neighborhood. The Condo Coaches is brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. And now your host, Johnny Torres.
Hello, everyone. Once again, it's the Condo Coaches radio show from whenever, wherever you may be listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Got another great show in store for you. But, of course, if you've missed a show, you can catch us just about anywhere online. Of course, the podcast is my favorite. You can catch us on iTunes and subscribe to us so you don't miss an episode. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. Just look up the Condo Coaches. And, of course, Facebook Live. We're live on our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Condo Coaches. You got to say hi and wave to the camera. And you can watch us every day. Mondays, we're back on Mondays around 1 o'clock. You can watch us live. Send us your comments, your questions. And for those of you listening or watching for the first time, the Condo Coaches are a team of educational and informational resources for board members and residents who live under a condominium or homeowners association. Our mission is to help these associations run effectively, efficiently, and on budget. And, of course, with me, as always, head coach Dean Akers. How you doing, Dean?
Good, Johnny. How are you today?
Doing great. First week of the new year was a success.
Big time.
Unscathed, no big problems. We had a good first week of the year, and I think it's going to be an exciting 2017. Of course, as I mentioned last week, this past weekend was our first weekend on a new radio station. So we're now up to 4 radio stations across the state of Florida, helping condominiums and homeowner associations across the state of Florida. And your team's been, of course, the core, the foundation of that. And that's definitely something to be proud of, and looking forward to much more accomplishments in 2017.
Well, I can tell you this. This past week was nutty as always.
Yeah.
I'm almost got to give up my day job. But what's really exciting is the amount of new condo coaches we're getting across the state. We're getting lawyers. We're getting people with building expertise. We got Pete on today that, senior management with property management knows. He's got more T-shirts that he could probably tell us about. But we're just getting so much participation on the volunteer coach side.
Yeah.
And for me, that's exciting because it shows that we're really reaching and helping people.
Well, and again, we will get to our guest, Pete, here in just a minute. And in that same token, again, to remind people is that if you're on a board of directors, you're volunteering your time. And the group of condo coaches that you have put together are also volunteering their time. And regardless of what area you need help in, whether it's financial, whether it's organizational, whether it's construction related, we have condo coaches that are ready, willing, and able to volunteer their time to help you through these issues if you're serving on a board of directors for a community in their association. And so, of course, we have with us Mr. Pete Williams. Hello, Mr. Williams.
John, how are you today?
He's our guest coach for today, and we'll get into a little bit of your background experience a little bit later on. What we'd like to do is open the show with some of the phone calls, emails, and situations that we hear from the previous week. So, Dean, who's the winner of being the first example of the show?
Well, I got to tell you, there were some good examples, but during my day job on Friday, I flew to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay. And
we're based out of Tampa, Florida, and of course, people hearing this is a week late, but flying back through Atlanta on Friday night, the ice storm, everything, so we got stranded. One thing led to another. We're sitting there, and it's 2 a.m, and I'm talking to 3 gentlemen because we moved around, and we started talking. And they had heard of the condo coaches, and they were out of Fort Myers. And
That's awesome.
Yeah, so they got our card. They've got 2 of them on board of directors. And, of course, you can only imagine the stories that were happening at 2 a.m. in the morning, people that were way too tired to be talking about this stuff. But it was a really, really good weekend.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the things that I also wanted to bring up was a story that came out, I'd say it was a couple weeks ago. And maybe this, having, Mr. Williams' experience as well, maybe we can kind of touch on this. But it's the fact that there's a condominium building, and I'll refrain from using their name, but you can search for it online at the Tampa Bay Times. But there is a condominium building in downtown Tampa who is essentially looking for ways to force out its existing owners in an effort to become a fully residential condominium property. And so, again, I mean, it goes back to one of the top 10 things you need to know, which is our free download at thecondocoaches.com. But it's know your documents, right? Know your governing documents and know your rights and responsibilities as a homeowner in your community.
We may be helping that group. And
Awesome.
we're reaching out right now because we know some of the people. But out of that same came a call on Sunday with another group in another county that's going through the same thing. So I think I'm looking for an expert now to come on the show to talk about a lot of these condominiums in the downturn. Investors came in and they bought up a lot.
Right.
And this particular one you're referring to, the investors are right at the threshold to being able to turn it into a total rental property. And the people that bought in there that are still there don't want that to happen.
And so what is it that they're trying to accomplish? I mean, they're obviously trying to force them out just in terms of creating that environment of more renters versus owners. But are they trying to buy them out, or how are they essentially pushing people out of the properties that they own?
Well, we haven't engaged with them yet. We're reaching out this week. But I can tell you what the owners of they're buying units. They have 80-something% of the units based on what the Times said.
So they're buying out owners.
Buying owners, or have already stacked up groups of owners and bought out of banks, because this was a troubled property. And they're at the threshold now that in order to take it back, they've got to get a couple more, and then they meet that threshold to be able to kind of force everybody. But the forcing is not just black and white. It's not like you're sitting in your condo today and somebody walks in and says, get out, we just threw you out. There's a lot of remedies which our condo coaches are going to help them with.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's going to be a story to watch.
Well, the one that called me Sunday was interesting because we're helping him right now.
Yeah.
Just got another email from him. He has a group where their property's undervalued, and all he's trying to do is aggregate the group because it's a small condominium. Their return, if they were to sell out their units, would be enormous. And in that case, it's about presenting the right business plan, because they're sitting in a really valuable piece of property,
right,
that those people can sell those condos and tap themselves and say,
where the property is worth more than the condos are.
Oh, way more.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting.
So that's another twist to this whole thing.
Well, and we saw a while back, some months ago, that there was a property in Orlando where I think that happened, where the property, again, it's Orlando. I mean, it's one of the tourist capitals of the world. And the property was more valuable than the condominiums.
Right.
And all but one resident sold out. And so the pictures are incredible, because you see this property that's been entirely raised by cranes and all other kinds of construction equipment, and all that stands is this one lone condominium on this property. It looks more like a war zone because it's been destroyed. But they were holding out. They I guess didn't have other options and didn't want to relocate. And there's this kind of lone standing property, that they're sticking to their guns.
Well, in some cases too, John, the restraints that individuals may find themselves under is not conducive to the process itself. And so there are individuals who would be hurt by these kind of transactions. And, it is highly recommended that they try to band together as a group, that they find the right individuals to help counsel them, because it is a highly technical and legalistic aspect. And you can find yourself on the wrong end of it from the standpoint of being pushed into something that is not really conducive to you as an individual owner. So it pays to do your homework in those things and go to the right sources to get the right counsel.
And that might have been exactly what happened to them. Maybe they educated themselves and they realized that for them, selling this condominium property was not their best option.
Sure. And there's also individuals, let's face it, that sit back and say, it's mine, and no one's going to tell me what I can and can't do.
Sure.
And stick their head in the sand and expect everything is going to work out. And that is not always the case.
Well, and judging by the story, it did seem that there was some emotional value there because this property had been in the family for some time, and the kids had grown up there and all that sort of thing. And again, it's Orlando, so it was like a vacation home for them, and I think there was some emotional attachment there that also played into that decision.
Exactly.
Just before I get to your introduction, I did want to bring up a question from our website. And again, if you'd like to submit a question or comment, you can do it right through Facebook, through our live stream at facebook.com/The Condo Coaches, or our website, thecondocoaches.com. That's thecondocoaches.com. And this email comes from Beth. And she goes, what is your opinion on the following question? When a weekly meeting is held with the property manager to discuss maintenance issues, can the entire board be present for the discussion? This would be a quorum, but no voting on the maintenance issues would occur. We have a resident that says it's against the Florida statute.
Well, I had one of our legal condo coaches reach back, and we've responded to that. But essentially, the Cliff Note version was that as long as it's not a called meeting, there was a term she used. It was a committee or
workshop.
Yeah, that was exactly the word I think was workshop.
Yeah, there are various ways that you could look at that, and I think that this is where I have a tendency of being on the conservative side. It does not hurt to advertise it as a board meeting or a board workshop, and if residents want to attend, that's fine. And, you conduct it as if it was a board meeting. The property manager gives their report, and it's over. The board doesn't necessarily have to take action. My concern over not properly advertising it is very difficult when you're given certain sets of circumstances and facts from your property manager not to want to take action. Mm-hmm. And so you've told people, we're not taking action on it. We're just here to hear what they say.
Right.
But invariably, action can be taken.
Okay.
And that's a problem.
All right. Well, we'll get back to that and introduce our guest, Mr. Pete Williams, in the next segment. It's the Condo Coaches radio show, thecondocoaches.com. Check it out.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Juice, Mom. Juice, juice, juice.
Mommy, why are we going to the store?
Mom, I want juice.
Mom.
Juice, juice, juice.
Mommy.
Juice, juice, juice.
Mom.
Juice, juice.
Your child will have different needs at different stages of life, and that includes the car seat. That's right, the car seat. A car seat isn't one size fits all. You have to have the right seat based on your child's age, weight, and height. See, car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. But there's a website that gives you all the information you need. safercar.gov/the right seat. You'll find out about types of seats, when to have a seat rear-facing, when to switch it to forward-facing, when it's time for a booster seat, and when it's time for your child to ride in the back seat with a seatbelt. Protect your child's future at every stage of life. Go to safercar.gov/the right seat. That's safercar.gov/the right seat.
A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you so much once again for listening. If you want to participate on the Condo Coaches radio show, you can call us 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. You can also email us. Dean himself will answer you. That's help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com. And you can also go on our website, and I must oblige, in just telling you once again how amazing this booklet is, because it's an incredibly popular piece of literature we've put together. It's the top 10 things you need to know if you are a board member on a homeowners or condominium association. It's going like wildfire. It's a free download. If you go to our website, thecondocoaches.com, download it and pass it on to all your friends, because we know you're going to want to. The printed copies have been going, faster than we can print them. And so go over to our website, thecondocoaches.com, look for our playbook, and that's where we'll email you in a PDF the download of our booklet. Again, the top 10 things you need to know if you are a board member for a condominium or homeowners association. And so let me take this opportunity to introduce our guest coach for the day. It's Mr. Pete Williams. Mr. Williams has over 30 years of experience in all areas of district, association, and amenity management. Mr. Williams has been qualified as an expert witness to provide testimony in various types of court action, including bond validation hearings, foreclosure and bankruptcy proceedings, and various other administrative hearings on the local government level. Now, here's the good stuff. Prior to starting his own consulting company, he was with Rosetta & Company, a very big property management company, and he was the vice president and director of management for a firm that managed 80-plus communities with more than 12,000 units. These communities range from small 50-unit communities to 400-unit luxury waterfront condominiums with budgets in excess of $30 million. I wanted to mention this because I did catch it, didn't want to kind of read off the whole thing, but I wanted to thank you for your service. Mr. Williams served as an NCO in the United States Marine Corps.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for being on the show. You have an incredible amount of knowledge, and so we are going to be talking about board meetings, making them effective. We've also talked about some of the do's and don'ts. Even here in just the first segment, we were talking about what qualifies as an official meeting, and of course, being transparent about the process whenever possible. And so just going back to that, we were asked if a meeting with the board of directors and the property management company was considered an official meeting, because official meetings have to be noticed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so what constitutes an official meeting?
Well, you'd have to look at an official meeting as any time you have a quorum of board members together that are going to be discussing the business of the association. Frankly, my opinion being, and you may have a legal opinion that's differently, but I usually deal with an overabundance of caution to say that any time you have a quorum of the board that is being given any information that relates to the activity or the business of the association, it should be a duly called and noticed meeting. Because as we all know, invariably, as human beings, we have a hard time hearing information and not reacting to it. And before you know it, what happens is one or more of those board members that make up that quorum are going to say, look, at the next scheduled meeting, we're going to have to do this, this, and that. Well, they're describing business action.
Sure. And
that should be done in front of the membership. And so I would never recommend that you try and find a way of having a non-board meeting that is filled with board members for which information is going to be imparted. Now, you can certainly label it as a workshop. Let individuals in the form of the notice that the board is not intending on taking any action. It is for informational purposes only. It may be a little less formal than the way that you would normally conduct a board meeting, but at the very least, you'd want to do that. You'd want to, comply with the notice requirements of the 48-hour posted notice, for your continuous basis. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a proper posting site, then you've got the mailed notice requirements, and you'd simply refer back to the statutory requirements in those instances to make that happen.
But even in this kind of a situation, it wouldn't hurt to invite the residents, right, to attend. If it's a meeting between the property management company and whether or not the entire board is there or not, that's a different question.
Sure. I don't think it hurts.
Sure.
I think sometimes that you might have one or two board members or even the property manager themselves that might think that having the residents there is going to lengthen out the meeting, draw it out, or make it more cumbersome than it needs to be. The difficulty here is you have to remember who it is you're serving.
Right.
And even as a board member, you're serving those residents. And therefore, especially when it comes to those kind of workshop things, it doesn't hurt for them to hear those things.
Well, nobody likes being left out of the loop.
No,
the truth
absolutely.
of the matter is that even if they don't attend, they like to know that something is going on. And so even the notice may not get anybody else to attend other than the ones who were originally going to attend anyways, but at least they're aware that a meeting was taking place.
Nothing worse than having something happen that you feel you should have known about, but you feel you were purposely left out of.
Right.
Yeah, well, Mr. Pete Williams is our guest coach. If you don't want to participate, again, you can always message us on Facebook during our Facebook Live broadcast at facebook.com/the Condo Coaches. You can also call us 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. That number goes right to Dean Akers. And as well as the email, help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com. Now I'm stressing it because people are calling it all times of the day, all times of the night, weekends, holidays. I mean, and I get it. We're here to help. But I'm hoping that some people might take that into consideration when they decide to call Dean Akers at 1:00 in the morning.
Let me tell you what, they can call me anytime. But
all right, good.
I had one yesterday. So
hey, you asked for it. Hey, you asked for it.
It actually works better because I have a day job. So,
So again, the Condo Coaches radio show with our guest coach Pete Williams, and has over 30 years of experience here in the field. And thank you so much for being on the show. We constantly talk about the foundation of how these boards run, and we find that often the case or the breakdown in many of these cases is communication. Where do you also see a major problem with the way some of these boards are run?
Well, I really think the unfortunate part about it is the actual board meetings themselves and the lack of understanding or wherewithal to actually properly conduct the meeting. First off, from the residents' perspective, I think the residents need to understand that the meeting, I hate to put it this way, but it's not for their entertainment. It is really for the board to conduct the business of the association. And because of that, the board itself needs to take the steps to really put in the proper procedures and rules and regulations for conducting that meeting. Hopefully that's done with the help of their property manager or their legal counsel. And the purpose behind that is that, there's many things that you can do to, properly maintain your association and have people get, the warm and fuzzy feel good about where they live. One of the most important ways of doing that is having effective meetings that people want to attend, that people feel like are properly run, they get good information from it, and the board is listening and hearing and reacting to the things that they need. The first thing, obviously, that needs to happen is just the proper preparation, whether it's a community that is self-managed or whether or not they have a management company. Having an agenda with identified agenda items with all the agenda materials as far in advance of the meeting is imperative. The other thing that I would urge board members to read the material that's sent to you. Prepare in advance. I know they're volunteers. I know they have other things to do in life.
Sure.
However, if you show up at a board meeting and the first thing you're doing is being asked to approve the minutes from the prior meeting, and you put your hand up and say, let's halt a minute, and you're sitting there reading them, that sets a tone with the residents about how prepared you are to participate.
Right.
And so those things I think are important, making sure that all the documents are there. If a board president or the presiding officer that is going to run the agenda, or if it's going to be the manager, if all of the material is not there, then I really do believe that there should be an option put forward to the board to table those things.
Well, in talking about the agenda, I mean, oftentimes that alone will dictate, whether people show up or not.
Oh, it will.
Right.
And I think part of that is, being prepared also. And making sure that knowing what's on the agenda and then taking a look at how do you equip to have that meeting. There's a lot of associations that are used to having maybe 5 people show up. They might have 2,000 units and you've got 5 people that are showing up. But you do something like put on there that the board is going to discuss whether or not there should be a change to the restrictions and an amendment made for the color of mulch, and you are going to have 500 people showing up screaming bloody murder.
Sure.
And if you're using the same little gathering room in the clubhouse that accommodates 10 people, you've got a problem.
Right.
So the first thing is, can everybody hear? It certainly is not an unreasonable expense to go out and make sure you got at least one microphone and an amplifier that everybody can hear. I cannot tell you over the years the number of times I've sat in rooms where, and my voice carries.
Yeah.
So if it sounds like I'm yelling at you, I'm not. But, I've been told you got people waving at you in the back of the room. I can't hear you. Right. Every question that's asked, every comment that's made. And so you need to make sure that you're getting the word out to everybody's there, that they can hear it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So would...
Well, hold on. Don't get to the question yet. We'll save it for the next segment because we got it. So we'll leave on that cliffhanger there. So we'll get to Dean's question after this. If you have a question, hit us up on the phone, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. We're talking effective board meetings. Help at thecondocoaches.com is our email address. And, of course, our website for all future and past episodes is thecondocoaches.com.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Hi, I'm Layla Ali. I might be undefeated in professional boxing, but there's one problem even I can't fight alone: childhood hunger. Over 17 million kids in America may not know where their next meal is coming from. That's 1 in 5 children. Yet billions of pounds of surplus food produced right here in America just get thrown out every year. That's more than enough to feed every last hungry child. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks gathers surplus food and gets it to hungry kids before it goes to waste. But they can't do it without your help. Join me in supporting Feeding America and your local food bank by going to feedingamerica.org. Together we can knock out hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
To help solve hunger in your community and to find your local food bank, visit feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you so much. Again, you can catch us on iTunes as well. Get a podcast version of the show. Subscribe today. Search for The Condo Coaches on iTunes. Our guest coach today is Mr. Pete Williams. He has over 30 years experience in property management and working with Condominium and Homeowners Association. Of course, with us as always, head coach Dean Akers. We're talking effective board meetings. We were just saying, putting together a solid agenda for every meeting, making sure that you're up to speed on all the documents that are going to be covered in those meetings, and also even something as simple as a $50, I think maybe $50, $100 little speaker and microphone so everybody can hear you in the meetings, or just a few of the things that you can do to make your meetings more effective. Right. Now, Dean, I hit the brakes on you there at the end of the last segment, and you had a question, so go. Better be a good one.
Well, with Pete being an expert here and me being a condo coach and going out, I was going to ask him candidly or comically, if there's such a word, is so if a president's up there, and this actually happens, so this is not a what if, she goes, somebody starts arguing, she holds her gavel up and she goes, so if you want to be president, come on up and I'll turn it over to you now. Is that generally a good response?
Not something I would recommend, but, I have seen that happen literally thousands of times. I mean, that's, it is unfortunate, but we all have buttons that can be pushed. And sometimes when people feel like they're under attack, that's the kind of thing that happens. That also leads into, though, one of the other things that I think is imperative when conducting your board meetings, and that is having a statement that is adopted by the board that follows with other rules and regulations about the participation and the amount of professionalism or decorum that is expected, not only from the board members, but from the residents. And so as inappropriate as that comment would be from the board president you were talking about, it happens way too often. And I do think that, this is, I hate to say it, it's almost a societal problem at this stage, where people are not allowed to have opinions, or people want to hold the opinion of another person against the person. We're into an era now where personal attacks go on. That really cannot be condoned.
Well, and once you set that precedent, forget it. Like the cat's out of the bag.
There's almost
and you can't go back to having that decorum. And
it's very difficult. And I think that whether you want to call it drawing a line in the sand, if a board has not previously done it, if they have had board members that have been out of control, or board meetings that have been out of control, including sometimes board members, it needs to cease because it is not productive. It is not for the benefit of the association. And so,
overall, that just creates a negative environment in the community.
Well, it's very negative. It also creates a lack of participation. I don't know how you individually feel, John. The last thing in the world I want to do is go, whether it's during the day or some evening, and spend some time with a bunch of people that are absolutely trying to character assassinate one another,
sure,
or are using language that, frankly, I haven't heard since I was in Marine Corps boot camp. And believe me, it's not acceptable for an association meeting. But, the difficulty with that also is it creates a lot of hurt feelings. It creates factions within a community. And especially from the board member perspective, it's one thing when the residents are doing it, but if you as a board member do it, you suddenly start to lose credibility with the residents.
And authority.
Well, you've lowered yourself to somebody else's level, and that never goes well. It is not professional. And I understand that we're not dealing with professional board members per se. We're dealing with volunteers. They're not paid. Some of them are having to devote a tremendous amount of time. And so therefore, this may be their first foray into this kind of a setting, and they just don't know. And this is where you have to rely on the management company. So whatever rules for participation, because, owners in an HOA or a condo do have the right to address the board on particular business items that are on the agenda. But set proper rules, set time limits, but do not allow an individual to start berating using vulgar language. They need to be gavelled out of order. They need to be
shut it down immediately.
Shut it down. It gets to the point, and this is how bad this has gotten, that there are numerous associations throughout this state that actually have off-duty law enforcement officers sitting in their meetings because board members have been physically threatened. Other residents have been physically threatened. The other thing that needs to happen, too, is realize that part of that participation by the residents is limited. You have the right to establish reasonable rules and regulations as to how they participate. I'd recommend that the association's attorney help craft them so that no one can look at it as being in violation of the way that the statute is written. It's covered under Chapter 720.303. If anybody wants to go look it up, it doesn't say a whole lot, but you need to make sure that whatever you're doing follows the intent of the law. The other thing that is very, very important in my mind is to understand that the formation of a board meeting and the way it is conducted is a debate process. It is not debate and rebuttal. The last thing in the world you want is whack-a-mole going on out in the audience where one person is addressing the board, another person's popping up, and you tell him to sit down, and two more are getting up.
And that's how you end up with 3- and 4-hour board meetings.
It's time that is wasted, and what ends up happening there is it takes its toll on the participation. And people will stop coming because it's no longer productive.
And I mean, most people aren't going to go out and read a copy of Robert's Rules, to conduct these board meetings. But, it certainly wouldn't hurt to at least pick up the Cliff Notes version and understand exactly what it takes to run a solid, coordinated, organized meeting.
Well, it's also interesting, too, that Robert's Rule of Order is also not mandated by law, and it's typically not followed in its entirety. But you're using an abbreviated version of that where you're setting
it gives you some
standards.
Ground
You're
rules.
Setting standards of behavior and ground rules as to how those things are going to happen. And without setting that kind of expectation of the residents in their participation and handing out exact rules, including a policy on civil behavior, if that is necessary, and with the complete understanding so that people, when they get there, they know. They've been given something, even if it's right there when they walk in the door and they're reading it.
You're setting those expectations.
Exactly. And then stick to it.
Yeah.
The biggest offenders in that area are the board members themselves that start making exceptions. That start allowing people to, somebody's expressed an opinion. They don't want to paint the clubhouse blue. They want to paint it green. Another guy wants it green, and he explains that blue's a really bad color and it affects people emotionally or mentally or whatever. And the other person who wanted the blue now feels obligated to stand up and say, no, you're wrong, and here's why.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you create animosity between people that doesn't need to exist. Again, it's a debate format. It's not debate and rebuttal.
Not debate and rebuttal. All right. Well, once again, we have Mr. Pete Williams with us, over 30 years of experience in district, association, and amenities management. Dean, you've been in a number of these board meetings. And would you agree? Would you say typically it's the board members who kind of, unfortunately, let these meetings unravel?
Oh, totally. They don't have it. They don't have the experience, and they get their buttons pushed, to his point. And once a button's pushed, I mean, I told you about the one lady calling me that the board president called her an F-bomb and another bomb name in public.
Wow.
And boy, that went downhill real quick.
No, and at that point, how do you recover from that, right?
Well,
how do you rebuild from that?
This is where having definitive guidelines as to what you're going to do for the meeting of the format, for the participation, and also how to take care of those unruly situations. One of the first things that you would immediately do is, gavel a person out of order and have the presiding officer call for recess.
Can I interrupt? This was the president.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Yeah.
But any of the other board members can be nudged by the manager. If there's no manager, I would urge another board member to immediately call for a motion to recess till at least gain control. There's also, under Robert's Rule of Order, even though you're not following it in its entirety, and a lot of people miss this point, a motion to adjourn is a primary motion. It does not require a second. If somebody inadvertently on the board says, I move to adjourn, the meeting must be adjourned.
Wow. Doesn't even need to be voted on?
No.
Wow.
And so that's the ace up your sleeve that you keep just in case you really
shut it down.
to. Because you're not gaining anything. If people are arguing and there's inappropriate language, it even gets to the point where there's pushing and shoving.
Yeah.
You talk about your situation. I actually had a president that was getting heckled by somebody's wife out in the audience. And he finally threw his hands up in the air and said, that's it. I'm going home and I'm getting my gun and I'm coming back.
Ooh. Oh.
My manager had to call the sheriff's department, try and get somebody there immediately.
Sure.
Everything was in chaos. And then, of course, you get other people in the audience that are picking sides. And before you know it, there's all of this unnecessary activity because this person got his buttons pushed and couldn't count to 10 before exploding.
Yeah.
And it is somewhat understandable. We all have our limitations, but that's a little much.
Well, and if you have some division in your board meetings, and we know it happens, it's very common. Don't feel like it's an exclusive club that you're in. The Condo Coaches, again, can be an essential tool in your tool belt to help you in these situations. Mr. Williams is now one of our condo coaches, and we can certainly send either Mr. Williams or an expert like him to come and help you with your board of directors meetings. Even if you're not feeling that your meetings are effective or they're reaching the residents, and if you need help in any of those areas, you can call us 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. Help at thecondocoaches.com. Gotta love that email address. Help at thecondocoaches.com is also a great way to get a hold of us. And of course, thecondocoaches.com, thecondocoaches.com is our website where you can not only see blog posts on all the issues that we talk about here on the show, but you can also see past episodes, and you can also submit your questions, your issues, or even download our playbook, the top 10 things you need to know if you are a board member on a condominium or homeowners association board of directors. So we're talking effective board meetings. Our guest coach, Mr. Pete Williams, and how do you even begin to rebuild? And we'll get into this into the next segment, but for you to kind of start thinking about how do you rebuild in that situation where you've had or you have a lot of division in the community, specifically maybe between the residents and the board of directors. So if you want to contribute to the show, again, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415, help at thecondocoaches.com. We'll be back. It's the Condo Coaches radio show. Subscribe to us, iTunes, YouTube, and Facebook. We'll be back.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
If you're a guy turning 18, you need to register with the Selective Service System. It's the law, and we wanted to make absolutely sure you get the message, so we brought in someone we knew you'd pay attention to.
50 push-ups!
Hey, Coach.
Get on that computer! SSS.gov! Not fast enough! 50 jumping jacks!
It's for your own good, because not registering with Selective Service could cost you a shot at college loans and grants, federal jobs, job training, and in most states, it could even cost you a driver's license.
I'm talking to you! Run that hill! 50 hills!
Go to SSS.gov to register with Selective Service. 2 minutes and you're done. It's just something you have to do.
Pick up the pace! 50 ballet jumps over the alligator pit!
Register with Selective Service at SSS.gov within 30 days of turning 18. If you don't, the consequences could be ugly.
Don't you smirk at me! 50 belly flops into moving traffic!
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
We're talking effective board meetings. That's right. There is such a thing as an effective board meeting, and we can help you get there if you want to enlist one of the Condo Coaches for your board of directors. Just hit us up at thecondocoaches.com, or you can reach out to Dean via email, help@thecondocoaches.com. We do go out, and in addition to all the different assessments that we do, financial, security, and organizational assessments, we'd be more than happy to come out there and even maybe mediate some of these issues, so they don't turn into bigger legal issues down the road. We were talking about losing control of the meetings, and once that precedent is set where, there's insults being thrown, there's a lot of division in the community. How do you rebuild from that? What are some of the things that you feel can be done to try to regain some of that trust and that effectiveness, really, that you need to be a functioning board of directors?
Well, I think one of the first things that has to happen is there's a complete reset. The board has to have a meeting where the only topic that is going to be discussed is how they move forward effectively in the future.
Okay.
And reestablish the guidelines, reestablish that there are not going to be any exceptions to the rule. Reestablish that, Joe, the good guy that lives down the street that everybody likes, doesn't get 5 minutes to talk. And John, who everybody hates, only gets 1. So, removing the arbitrary nature of these things and allowing for some open discussion. Let the board take its lumps. Let the people explain to them what they like and they dislike about the way they're conducting themselves and the way that they're treating the residents. I think it's very difficult sometimes to not have personalities get in the way. And you have to put your personal biases aside on particular issues if you're sitting on the board and realize you are there for the benefit of the community. Not just a few of the people. Your decisions need to be based on what's for the better of the whole, not for just a particular group.
Well, let me just say, I think because I know this happens, is that if you decide to take a board position because you have a personal agenda that maybe you want to do something to your driveway or extend your backyard or something like that, it's going to be a pretty miserable year for you.
Well, what's really interesting is some people seem to think that if they get on the board, they can change everything.
Sure.
Until they get on the board and realize that their hands are pretty much tied. That, yes, things can be changed, but it is not an easy process. It's very cumbersome, and it better make sense. And it better,
and benefit everyone.
Exactly. Otherwise, you're not going to get the votes. Trying to amend a declaration of an HOA or a condo in this day and age is almost impossible, because of the onus of the document requirements or the law that regulates those amendments. The other thing that we hear a lot of, which I would caution residents themselves to not look at their board as being dysfunctional, and I hear this a lot from people that go, every board member doesn't always agree. Somebody's, always against something. And I have an interesting opinion on that. I prefer to consider that as constructive abrasion.
Sure.
If you want your associate to move forward and not stagnate, you better have 1 or 2 board members who aren't always in agreement with the other. And you have to hope that everybody, by way of having the proper amount of discussion ends up with new thoughts, new ideas to breathe life into an association.
Well, and there is a level of politics in all this, in terms of it's personal politics, but just like our government, I mean, to be effective and functioning, you have to reach compromise. You have to find something that works for everyone.
And it's, compromise is one thing. I'd like to almost see it that there's always resolution. And that is a very difficult point to reach. But I think if individuals set aside their own personal bias, their own personal agenda, and clearly look at what's best for the whole, that resolution is much more possible than simply compromise. And so, part of that is also listening. Part of that is not always taking that one person that every community has that always seems to come up with the most inane comments you can possibly imagine.
Or hypothetical scenario.
Because, what's that old adage? Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while.
Right.
It's amazing that those individuals can actually come forward with valid points that really should not be just tossed off to the side. So every person deserves to be heard. Every person deserves to be treated with respect. And the board should react, within those guidelines. And the board needs to respect one another. Just because all of the board members don't agree doesn't mean that the guy on the end who voted no should be ostracized. It's his opinion. Without his opinion and without his contrary point, you might not have, as a board, thought of all of the aspects of a particular issue appropriately. And as long as you feel you've done that, then you can feel confident that you're guiding your community forward. Because that's what everybody voted you in for.
Right.
Not to be your friend.
And so in talking about, effective board meetings, really, because again, that's the topic of the show. Do you find that, and this is, I think, maybe the first thing in our booklet, the top 10 things you need to know, but do you find that the board of directors are typically knowledgeable or not knowledgeable in terms of the contents of their governing documents?
They're typically not knowledgeable. Some of them have given them a cursory overview. And certainly they are, unfortunately, written by attorneys. And they are written sometimes to such an extent that you could read the same paragraph 5 times and come up with a different interpretation all 5 times.
Sure.
And so, they're not the easiest thing to read. I often used to laugh with board members and say, if you're an insomniac, just start reading your CC&Rs and you're going to fall asleep. And so, and it's not their occupation.
Right.
It's not what they've done for a living. And sometimes you have to, again, remove that personal slant that you're trying to put on the way you're reading things. It's almost like the resident that gets up and says, I want to put a fence up, goes to their restrictions and says, well, it says right here, in Article 6-305 that I can have a fence. And you say, no, that's not what it says. It says you can have a fence if you fill out the proper paperwork and it complies with all the requirements of the architectural control standards in your documents. That doesn't just mean you can go put up a fence. And so, part of that is people read until they get to the point where they've gotten what they want.
Yeah, and they'll interpret it the way they want.
And they stop right there.
Sure.
And that's never the way those documents work. There's always one more paragraph that might change that whole thing.
Well, and that's certainly one of the things that we've done with the condo coaches is we'll have a condo coach come out to a community and walk through their governing documents. Obviously, some of them are, the width of a dictionary. But, certainly at least to cover the major points in there. Dean, tell us a little bit more about, how the condo coaches have been able to assist with some of these issues that stem from a lack of knowledge of the governing documents.
Well, we're helping a lot there, but I would say the biggest thing that I've been noticing our condo coaches have been helping, back to Pete, we're actually helping with facilitation of these boards. We're going out and meeting with boards, and we're kind of coaching them on how to run their board meeting, almost to the extent that we're in the audience going kind of like this, hey, no. And the reason is we're coaching them on it from the standpoint so they don't let it get out of control. And one of the biggest things we're going to start here in the next 60, 90 days is we're going to have board member retreats, but on communication. We're going to get it certified by the state so it could get part of the thing. But back to Pete's point, when they sit there and they get upset and they start doing stupid stuff like threatening a person in the audience. I had one board meeting I was facilitating. The guy in the audience had a real legitimate issue, and they just told him to shut up.
Wow.
I met with him afterwards. His issue was huge for the association. We went out, solved his issue. All somebody had to do is say, yeah, let's listen to that. Fred, can we get you to be the committee person to head up that issue about that and circle back with us next month? If they had done that, he would have shut up and he would have been happy.
And there was likely some underlying history there, right? Is that
there was underlying history because he was upset about the same circumstance, but the same circumstance was very real.
Gotcha.
And had they empowered him to go do the research, he would have either said yes, which he did, and he and I worked together on the research, and he was right. So it was one of those things, he was just the way he approached it from the field that the board was upset. Had he been a more diplomatic approacher, he would have gotten it done. But, being on a board, you have kind of not only a fiduciary responsibility, but I call it a parent responsibility. You're responsible for the good of that association. And so I always tell them, man up. You cannot let these people push your buttons. Listen to them, give them an opportunity to be heard, and then, quite frankly, engage them in the solution.
All right. Well, on that note, again, it gives us a good opportunity to talk about the booklet, Top 10 Things You Need to Know if you are on a board of directors for your condominium or homeowners association. It's a free download at thecondocoaches.com. That's thecondocoaches.com. You can just fill out a quick form, and we will actually email it to you where you can just download it. So check that out, thecondocoaches.com. We'll be back after this.
You've been listening to the Condo Coaches, brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find us online at thecondocoaches.com and join us this same time next week as we help you navigate life in your managed community.